I'd like to welcome you all to our event tonight. I'm David Witkowski. I'm president of the Wireless Communications Alliance. Just by a quick show of hands, how many people are here for the first time? How many people are attending WCA? Wow, and all those new folks. Excellent. So the IoT SIG within the WCA is a new effort for us. We've had a few events so far. It's been growing, and then of course tonight's a joint event between the mobile and the IoT SIG. Tristan Jew is one of our board members. He's co-chair of the mobile SIG. He's the one who put all this together. So Tristan deserves a huge round of applause for putting this event together. I would also like to recognize our sponsors. We have numerous sponsors who help the WCA. We are a nonprofit organization, and nobody on my team takes a dime for what they do. So this is an all-volunteer effort. Everybody is putting this on. Thank you. They do it because they really love wireless as an industry, and they're all involved in it. It's a great opportunity for them to give back to the community that's given to them. Two sponsors that I would like to particularly recognize: Pacific Crest Securities. Are you? Yep. Thank you. So thank for the. They are covering our food tonight. So thank you. And Cadence Design Systems is our venue host tonight. So for me, this is a homecoming. I used to work at Cadence back in 2006, and we used to host the WCA events over in Building 5 at the old cafeteria. So it's great to come back to this new facility, and it's excellent. So Neil Robinson from Cadence Design Systems, can you come up and say a few words? Neil Robinson.
Hi there, everyone. Just in case you don't know who Cadence is, and there are some who don't. So Cadence has been around for 25 years. It's a top-tier EDA company with bleeding-edge tools for people who are designing ASICs. And if you haven't noticed the huge signs that are around the building, we were recently voted one of the top 100 best companies to work for in the US. And also they've been building up their IP group recently. So I work for the IP group. The IP group basically supplies blocks of kind of predefined logic for ASIC designers, both design IP for interfaces and analog front end, verification IP to make sure it all works, and Tensilica processor IP, and that's where I come from. So Tensilica processors are now shipping like 2 billion units a year. So we've been around for a long time, fairly much all in IoT and mobile wireless and things like that. The #1 DSP provider, and also the #2 shipper of licensable IP. That's it. Thank you very much. Enjoy your meeting.
With the dimming of the lights, that's it for us tonight. Could we get somebody to turn the lights back on? I think it's automatic. It happens at 7 o'clock. So this is the Internet of Things. It thinks it's smarter than we are, is the problem. So the humans need to move on. So how many people were over at IoT Developers Conference today? Show of hands. All right. So good show over there too as well. A lot of stuff going on this week. I think there are 3 IoT events this week, and there's one next week plus ours. So huge amount going on. Without further ado, I would like to recognize Tristan Jew as our co-chair of the Mobile SIG, and he's going to be our moderator tonight. So go ahead and take it away, Tristan. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So again, wow, very dynamic. So my name is Tristan Jew. I am one of the board members at the WCA. Been doing that since 2010. I chair the Mobile SIG. Just a quick intro for myself. Just in case I introduce you, but a few regular basis. But I've been around the wireless mobile side of the wireless industry for the past 19 years.
Are we tapped into the audio, or is the audio?
Heavily focused on mobile. But one thing that is kind of differentiates my background is I've been fortunately been able to go full circles around the mobile ecosystem. So building from the world's first kind of CDMA handsets at Samsung Mobile when they were a fledgling startup, to helping launch Android open source project together with Google in 2008 when Android doesn't exist. To fast forward a few more years, I'm now, my day job is managing all aspects of a fairly large business, which was from, ground up, built from ground up from a mobile sensor side of the business at a company called NASA. I really enjoy, helping the industry kind of move forward. As you can see, I'm super excited about what's going to disrupt meaningfully and sustainably the mobile industry in the next 5 to 10 years. I'm always out in the hunt and look out for that. I'm convinced that tonight's panel will, kind of open some eyes and hopefully, will kind of shed some light in terms of what we think will next, kind of disrupt and help, move the mobile industry and the IoT industry forward. So with that, I think I'd like to introduce our panel before we get into the main agenda. So why don't each of the panelists give a quick background about yourself and just about the company, just real quick. Starting with George. Sure.
So I'm George Yu, the CEO and founder of Wearables. We make a Bluetooth-based color sensor that allows you to measure color of objects for the purpose of matching fabrics and plastics. Helps designers and interior designers, architects to pick out colors with confidence and to create their palettes with inspiration. It also allows manufacturers to communicate color with brands so that you have good color quality control throughout the supply chain. So this is what we do.
I think I turned mine on. My name is Jack Alquati. I'm the CEO and founder of Wearables Labs, and we're building one of the world's first connected bike lock. My background, I spent 10 years in aerospace defense, working on airplanes and helicopters and tanks. And then moved into I saw this new trend in IoT and wanted to move into connected objects like bike locks and try to disrupt new industries like bike share. And so that's where our labs comes in.
Can you hear?
Yes.
My name is Tom Flory. I'm the founder and CEO of New Spin Sports, formerly New Spin Golf. We focused originally on golf when we were launched in 2012. We made a small Bluetooth speed analyzer that's about the size of a USB thumb drive that fits just underneath the grip of your club on any club, putter, through driver. After you swing, instantaneously over on your smartphone, you see information about your swing as well as a 3D representation that you can animate, look at, as well as email with yourself, with your friends and your pros and so on to get information back and forth. We've been selling the product since about 2012 at the PGA show in Orlando, and we've since now moved towards additional sports as well as looking to go beyond the sports as we try to marketize our technology further.
Hi, my name is Sanjay Bhandari. I'm VP of Engineering at M-Cube. M-Cube makes MEMS motion sensors. We just last week passed a major milestone. We are a startup company. Last week we shipped our 100 million sensor into a cell phone player. So we are into several of these cell phones, tablets, now into wearable applications. Our claim to fame is we have very differentiated technology than many other players that were already in market. We make single chip monolithic sensors, which are both MEMS as well as CMOS connected together. And our claim to fame is we have the smallest accelerometer in the world. We call it the size of grain of sand. So it can literally go into any applications. It's going to make wearables much smaller than what we see today in terms of all the form factor. And now we can enable a lot of IoT nodes in different applications.
Terrific. Here at third base, my name is Jeff Bear. I'm with Broadcom, which is definitely not a startup. I am the Director of Marketing for our embedded family of RF products. Your familiarity with Broadcom might be, you called them at one point and nobody returned your call. But in reality, where we're strong is if you look at your smart device here, chances are 4 out of 5 of you have devices that include Broadcom connectivity. So when we talk about connected things, what my organization is responsible for is that connectivity. We have a family of different RF technologies, primarily Wi-Fi, Bluetooth Smart Ready. And our visions are two. One is everything and anything that's electronic in the future is going to be wirelessly connected. So that's the vision we see. That's what's happening. I think that's what we all see in the room. And the other part of the vision is from the point of view of Broadcom, we want the technology we make to be available not only to the large traditional Broadcom OEM customer, but also to the innovative startups in the industry. And one of the big initiatives that we're doing from the point of view of where I sit is making that technology available not only to the very large organizations, but also to the very small Kickstarter organizations getting started here in the Valley or in San Francisco and other places. So that's a big part of where we see ourselves taking Broadcom and why it's important to us.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, panelists. Now, let's go dive first into the panel. Here's our agenda. As you can see, we're behind schedule already. But we have a panel discussion scheduled for just over an hour. We'll try to head over into the audience Q&A earlier to catch up on the time schedule there. As we always do, we like to budget enough time for you to also interact with our speakers and myself towards the end, 20 plus minutes. Towards the end, we will also give away, as advertised, announced, raffle away our, with courtesy of our speaking companies tonight, 3 categories of these very exciting new mobile IoT mobile gadgets that you see here tonight. And towards the end, we'll wrap up hopefully before 9 p.m. To allow for some networking time. So that's our agenda for tonight. Let's see. Quick show of hands before we start with the panel section. Who from the audience consider themselves from startups? When we start, entrepreneurs. Great. Next, how about who from you guys think you are a player or participant in the IoT ecosystem? Great, fantastic. How about the mobile side? You could overlap, but call it mobile. Mobile means not just phones, but battery operated mobile devices. Okay, great. So good overlap. Fantastic. Also, a quick show of hands. How many of you have participated in our WCA's 2 years ago? We kind of tend to do these events every May, a product-based event in May. 2 years ago, we had one event that was titled Mobile Devices and User Experience. Okay, great. Okay, good. How about last year's Mobile Health panel? A bit more. Okay, great. That's good. So the reason I ask these questions is before we jump into this panel, I'd like to just kind of set the stage to share with you all some meaningful, I think, definitions / market stats that could matter and help frame this panel tonight. This particular slide is from 2 years ago when we put together that panel that discussed mobile devices and user experience. That's revolutionary path. And these are a copy and paste of that slide that we used back then. If you look at this, you can see that most of these have materialized. with screen sizes making more sense, larger screen sizes actually taking over. With iPhone 6 Plus launching a year and a half later after this event, context aware being more important. Notice, however, we also have kind of pinpointed wearables and accessories, which are smartphone connected accessories that interact with an app in your smartphone will take off. Fast forward 2 years, hence this event is going to be about double clicking into that space and as it relates to more IoT and what we mean is more sustainable and meaningful IoT in the mobile context. So let me show you a couple more slides here. Before, I think, while we were preparing for this event, I noticed that, unintendedly, the IoT as a terminology, as the current state of events suggests, is quite convoluted and it is quite honestly confusing to a lot of people. So, yes, we are for IoT and inclusive. This event and panel is about the IoT in a nutshell, in a large scale sense. But our event is specifically about the mobile side of the IoT. What we mean by that, I think it would hopefully help help you guys understand what our context and the scope of what we mean by our version of this mobile IoT by looking at going over these points. It is about the subset of these IoT devices that are mobile. By mobile means, by definition, connected to the smartphone hub and/or these mobile devices like tablets. M-Things is just intended to be in a very, we don't intend to kind of specify M-Things as in yet another industry kind of terminology standards, and don't worry about that. We're just kind of, for the moment, using that as for convenience. M-Things means mobile things that are connected to the internet. It is smart devices that enables these very unique, one or two very highly differentiated user experience that is quite valuable. But I quote one of the panelists' kind of expression: smartphones cannot do this, right? So I think you'll sink in as you kind of hear our discussion. But these things, quite often they're not sensory mechanism-enabled things, are highly differentiated, that the smartphones cannot do it natively, but it really makes sense to create that experience in the peripheral of the smartphone. And then lastly, it provides a path to rich cloud-based services, truly, that tags you along. When your phone is always with you, there's experiences around the phone that is tied to the cloud that really makes a lot of valuable sense. It is not intended to be just another way of rephrasing IoT or IoE, Internet, everything terminology-wise. It is not a general purpose wearable that focuses on convenience, improving the convenience, like the one that I have here, that were, more geared towards kind of putting together a laundry list of, features, convenience features mostly, and differentiating, but it is not about these, just to be clear, general purpose wearables. It is actually not about, its closest terminology-wise that we're going to cover as M-Things is accessories is the closest term, but accessories, bulk of those are not internet connected. So, like toy controllers or Bluetooth headsets, these are not kind of what we mean by mobile things. In a nutshell, graphically, what we mean is kind of nicely, depicted here. At the core of it is the smartphone or the mobile gadget that is acting as a hub. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense for you. The new trends that we're noticing that is supporting this whole mobile things growth is that there's several kind of very meaningful promising trends. One is that the hardware-based innovation is returning to Silicon Valley. There's signs everywhere, right? Including most recently, I think this might be relevant, bridging. Case fact is that the Playground Global, which Andy Rubin, the founder of Android and senior VP at Google, had just recently left to start up his own incubator called Playground Global. Just very quickly raised funding, and it's solely focused on hardware startups. He's reading this trend as we are. The funding, secondly, is no longer going to be a hurdle roadblock anymore, because if there is clear enough value proposition of what we're trying to build, cross-source funding sources are available for Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and so forth. Andy Rubin himself put together a $300 million fund, and he's almost there, Playground Ventures, that is specifically geared towards funding these disruptive, mobile hardware startups. And thirdly, importantly, there's a lot of stats floating out there that kind of tries to paint the picture of where long-term Internet of Everything or Internet of Things are headed. As you can see, the reason I put this up is if you contrast back to 2 years ago when we put up a mobile phone and kind of mobile devices category of the market growth. As you can see here, smartphones and tablets, in the grand scheme of things, is finally stagnating at around 2 billion per year shipment-wise. It's very obvious that there's not going to be a much more disruptive innovation that's going to be natively happening inside the smartphones. Hence, where's the future beyond this today, right? It's the Internet of Things, and we believe, our panel believes, that the mobile connected IoT is going to really capture that IoT portion in a big way. Okay, as opposed to these non-mobile connected like the end-to-ends of the world, right? Okay, so that's hopefully help set the stage. Lastly, this is the last slide that I think might help graphically kind of try to represent what we hope to describe tonight, cover tonight. It's our version of that smartphone connected mobile thing ecosystem, right? This middle piece here is, in fact, stolen directly from the IoT kind of publications right out there. I'm sure you guys have seen it many times. It's a little box of these, end-to-end expression of devices to how these devices connect to main core platforms. IoT has IoT developer platforms, but in our context, the core platforms that connect these devices would be the phones, smartphones and the tablets. And ending up with hub apps as a hub kind of scenario where these apps connect to cloud services, right, at the far end. At the other end, that enable these modules and devices that we're now calling M-Things, is enabled by these enabling technologies like the disruptive sensors that Sanjay's bringing to the table, these connectivity, Bluetooth Low Energy and so forth, that's really enabling that connectivity that makes better sense for these, for this context of what we're going to cover tonight in terms of these things. And here are the three companies that are represented tonight. And in the context of explaining this, I think you'll get a better sense of what this all kind of, how it will all converge and make better sense in terms of why this is so unique and a bit different from the traditional wearables and these traditional IoT devices. Okay, so if that helps you, we'll take your questions towards the end, as we said earlier. So why don't we now shift gears and get into the panel. Okay. So we're going to use this rapid fire Q&A. We're shooting for quantity of coverage rather than quality, just to make it clear. So there's supposed to be a time clock, as a matter of fact, a minute for each question, for each person. I'm just kidding. But it's literally about a minute per question. And we're going to, let's try to cover as many as we can tonight. First off, so we just talked about this mobile things, right? Internet of mobile things. This being kind of a graphic point of how the ecosystem might look like. Now, very briefly, this is for everyone, all five of you. how do you define as, what would you find, it doesn't have to be your own company, but what would you find as most interesting aspects about this new trend? That contrast that with kind of the trends that you've been exposed to in the past, but what makes it a bit more unique in your own perspective? You could contrast your own company example or other trends that you're seeing, maybe quickly, one by one. Yeah, starting with George.
I find it most interesting that anything devices are really about devices that you don't necessarily interact with all the time. Like your watch you wear a good portion of the day. But I think devices that you use maybe once or twice a day or maybe even once a week should also be connected because that data is valuable. For example, what we do is color and measure temperature and others is valuable to capture that data and make that useful. And so I find that trend to quite interesting. You pull open your drawer 10 years from now and all these little tools that you have in a drawer are now connected devices as opposed to just simply standalone devices.
Good. Jeff?
Yeah, so I think the Internet of Things that we have today is like, activity trackers and lights that turn red. I mean, that's really just kind of scratching the surface. I really see this like infrastructure that starts taking on connectivity becoming really valuable because you can kind of optimize, energy or parking and that kind of thing. So I really see kind of the future, the real value for Internet of Things coming in on the infrastructure side, where you're able to kind of like make big money savings on optimizing big systems.
I guess I see, in similar to the chart that Tristan showed, a series of concentric circles. And we started with PC, which was very much a ubiquitous type of device, one size fits all or sort of. And we added applications to that. There was many more to that. Those could be specialized more for different vertical needs. Well, then we get a new platform, that's the smartphone. Now everybody has a smartphone, which is a mobile platform. And the obvious extension to that is what we're calling M-Things. What, to me, is exciting about that isn't just the quantity of these things, but how laser focused they can become. So you really could put a square peg in a square hole and exactly meet that need rather than try to be more ubiquitous, which often results in something that nobody really completely wants. So that's where I see a real advantage in this, is getting these devices out quickly and having laser focus into a particular application and need that serves maybe even a small percentage of the population, but it serves it extremely well.
Very good. Very good. Response.
In the IoT area, people are still trying to figure out what's the right hub. And different companies are fighting to get into that hub. Like Nest is one example. They want to be center. Somebody else wants to be center at TV, somebody on the computer, and so on. Smartphone is one of those which is already there and it's already connected. But it's a lot of leveraging on the existing smartphone platform. And with this platform, the beauty of it is, if you are inventors, you focus on the main application, as opposed to worrying about how do I talk to these devices, how do I talk globally, and so on. You leverage on what the work that's already done. Any of these apps are in the open source. So that's the beauty of M-Things.
Jeff?
Yeah. For me, there are kind of two that came to mind. The first is, I sell an enabling technology, so I talk to a lot of different people building a lot of different kinds of devices. And the first is just the amount of incredible innovation and different ideas that are out there in the space. I mean, people come up with the wildest, craziest things. And I spent many years before this working in our smartphone group. And pretty soon after a while, a phone is a phone. But literally something is launched every week that is completely unusual and unexpected and fascinating that uses my technology. And that's pretty gratifying. And the other is to follow on to a point that you made earlier. The real key to the success in this market, I think, is simplicity. And I think there's nothing scarier in the world almost than a marketing guy on a whiteboard, because they're going to go there and come up with 65 usage cases on things and complicate them to death. And that's not how people buy things. I think what people are really looking for and what's really successful in this space is something that does one or maybe two things, but it does them in an especially optimized, intuitive way. And what we're seeing is a real focus on a breadth of devices that do a very limited number of things, but do them exceptionally well in a way that are useful to the consumer.
Very good. I like every single one of your responses very much. Very nice way of capturing this. Now, having covered that picture, now can each of you, all five of you, articulate what about your specific, and things or sort of propositions that you're bringing to the table that makes it your own technology or your offering compelling and differentiated in bringing this whole new experience to the consumers or customers. It doesn't have to be consumers, it could be a business and enterprise. And how do you see your company, each company, making your positioning, kind of differentiated in the market? Maybe this is your chance at kind of pitching your company's uniqueness. Starting with, I guess, maybe let's go reverse way.
The other way down the basis. Yeah, I mean, what I think is that for any communication technology, any kind of communication technology, the killer app is interoperability. If it doesn't interoperate easily and smoothly, then not only does the connectivity fail, but the product fails. If a consumer cannot get their product up and connected and doing something useful and interesting in 10 or 15 minutes, they're going to take it back to the store. And the advantage of ubiquitous connectivity, the fact that the connectivity that Broadcom makes is in all the PCs and all the phones and all the access points, means that you're going to have a link with the same technology and the same vendor on both sides of the link. And what that's going to give you is a very highly baked-in level of interoperability. And it's going to give you something less that you have to worry about as you develop your products, because at least at the low-level connectivity, it's going to, quote-unquote, just work. And I think that, from the point of view of Broadcom, what our strength is and also what our interest is in this market. We want you to have a smooth experience with the connectivity, and we want your customers to have smooth experiences, because ultimately that's good for all of us.
The MCube makes motion sensors, as it's shown on this slide. We are enablers for anything that moves. And there are a lot of applications in this IoT thing. We call it a subset. We call it Internet of Moving Things. So anything that moves, yourself included, right? You are moving inside your house, you track it using a smartwatch today. You measure your steps and so on. But there are so many objects inside your house. I mean, the door is moving, you want to monitor whether the door is open or closed. So you can use a motion sensor there. You can use it for multiple number of objects. I mean, just think about it. So what enables this technology and how do we differentiate ourselves? In the traditional way, when MEMS sensors were used, many companies used two chips. There was a MEMS chip and there was a CMOS chip, and they would connect the two chips together. Believe it or not, 40 years later, people are still doing that. That's our competition. MCube differentiation is that we make it in a single monolithic chip. So we have MEMS and CMOS all in the same die. And that makes it the world's smallest sensor. That's our claim to fame. So that has a cost advantage, that has a power advantage, that has a performance advantage. So that's how we differentiate. We just recently, last week, we shipped our 100 million unit, but that's just in the cell phone application. Now IoT is expected to be 50 billion units within the next 5 years. And each of these, or many of these applications are going to be based on motion sensors. So that's what we are going to be making.
For Newsman Sports, we have a fairly vertical application, and what has been interesting though is from a competitive standpoint, in 2012 when we launched, there was 2 other competitors at the show with us. In 2013, there was probably about 6, and now we're up to about 9 companies that are making sports-based motion tractors. So you'll have heard of one of them at some point. So what do we do as a small company to differentiate ourselves against companies such as Sony and Epson that have now entered that space? Well, certainly we protect our intellectual property. We feel we were first there. We feel we were first invented. But more importantly, as it relates to what you're giving to the customer, what we want to do is to give the right data at the right time. So that means more data isn't better. The wrong data isn't better. The correct data, data that is meaningful to them at the moment with which they're using it, is key. So as I was driving here, Google Maps told me I had a shorter route. Do I want to take it? Had it told me that 10 minutes later, it would have been useless and an irritant, in fact. But because it told me that information right in time, and it was the right information, it knew I wanted to get here quicker, it was extremely valuable. So what we look to do is to make sure that we're applying what we call our rules engine to be able to take the personalized data that people are collecting through the sensors, in this case for a sports training application, and make sure we're showing to them not just numerically but visually in a way that's meaningful, and then in a very, very as close to real time manner as possible. So if you're working with a pitcher, a young pitcher that's in high school, and he's learning to throw curveballs, and they don't want excess force on his elbow, if he throws a bunch of pitches and then you look at it on a videotape later that evening, that's not really very helpful. I mean, it's better than nothing, but you want to see what's happening while he's doing it. So why not be able to see in near real time the motion that his arm is taking and the torque that he's creating for his elbow? That's giving the right data at the right time, and that's what we're looking to do and have been with SwingSmart and look to do forward with other sports as well.
Yeah, so a little bit of the history of Skylock. We've designed it as kind of a consumer application to begin with, and it's a lock that you can unlock with your phone. But the kind of functionality that we have here is that if someone tries to steal your bike, it'll send a theft alert to you via Bluetooth. And the range we have is about 200 meters. We have an amplifier that is able to kind of take that signal very far. And then there's also a crash detection function. So if you crash your bike, it's automatically sends an alert to kind of family and friends. And then the secret weapon for us is really to take this and try to disrupt bike share. And what we've done is we've been able to kind of take all of the infrastructure that bike share has, like the kiosk, the point of sale system, and kind of distill it all down to this small little lock. And so kind of the focus for us moving forward is to take Skylock and build kind of an Uber for bike service. So anybody can walk up to a bike, unlock it using his phone, take the bike to his destination, lock it back up, and end the transaction. And so to do that, we needed to have kind of a very strong power management system. So that's why we included the solar panel. With 12 hours of sunlight, you get 6 months worth of functionality, just due to kind of like the ultra low power sensors and radios that we have on the lock. And so that enables to have something that's like perpetually running. You know, these bikes always live outside, so you always have a power source. And so now you don't have the big issues of like having a plumb power that these, you know, expensive systems have now. So that's kind of the history of Skylock.
So color is really an extremely underserved market. It's one of those really innate perceptions that human really conjures all sort of memories and emotions. But yet, if you look at color and how people decide color, the majority of the designers, majority of tools that are used to communicate color, to talk about color, is still printed cards. A huge deck of printed material. That's how you really decide color. It's an extremely underserved area in terms of digitally measuring color. There's only a handful of companies that does it, and they're extremely expensive technology. Only the most expensive brands can actually afford it. And so we differentiate ourselves because we hold some key patent-protected technology that allows us to enter the space and be a really critical player to measure color accurately. There's not many people who can do this. We have our own manufacturing, we have our own optic assembly systems, all proprietary methods to be able to do this correctly. And so we feel down the road, people are able to decide on color. If you go into a Home Depot, for example, and go to the paint section, you're overwhelmed with choices. It's one of the major barriers for people to make a purchase decision. And so once you can collapse that barrier and allow people to make that color choice and the color decision easier, you'll find a huge number of applications that's quite innovative and very few people are doing.
Very good. Thanks for articulating your story here. Now, the next question is, we talked about this ecosystem, and it starts with the device interacting through your phones and creating this very differentiated. We're all saying the same thing. Highly differentiated, niche but highly valuable experiences. But it doesn't end there. I think there's, as we mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago, these and things are connected through smartphones, which is by definition internet connected. And so there's cloud benefit, cloud services-based benefits that one can imagine bring to the table. Let me pick on a couple of you guys who's actually done this already. Right? How do you envision your startups, so startup entrepreneurs, I think Jack just started on that thread, so I'll pick on Jack and perhaps George too, on how you see given your business description and things experience that you're building, how you see taking leverage of cloud services and how you see deploying that actually makes adds incremental value in that whole experience. Can you articulate a bit more about how you envision yourself utilizing cloud?
So we decided to enter the whole color business not from a consumer standpoint, but rather straight into an enterprise and professional. So we solve professional problems in color. So that allowed us to create an interesting services model where we're not really selling devices. We're really helping you solve a problem in your supply chain. We're helping you solve a problem in terms of speeding up your design cycle of your products. So thereby, it's really kind of a software and hardware as a service type of model. And so the way we design our system is really kind of interesting, where the device by itself is useless without talking to the cloud. You cannot really get accurate color without talking to our system. And so thereby, it lends itself to a nice subscription type of model, where allowing people to subscribe to enable them to solve their problem.
Great. How about Jack? In your case, you talked a little bit about the Uber, model.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess for us, what's really important is to try to authenticate the user. And so how do you do that if you don't have a backend? Our backend system allows us to do public-private key encryption, and that allows us kind of the power to be able to authenticate users when they rent a bicycle. We know who they are. We're able to kind of give them a timestamp on the key that they get. And then when they end their ride, we're able to kind of like, end access for the key. And so all of that is happening between the device, their phone, and our backend system. And so without that, we wouldn't be able to offer kind of this new experience.
Great. That's a very good example. Both of the startup examples are, not hopefully kind of making very unique sense why they're doing it this way. Now, let me ask just a volunteer, a couple of you, anyone who feels comfortable answering this one. We're, in a nutshell, as you, even from these three startups that are represented in our panel, you can sense where this technology is coming from. These are quite advanced technology capabilities that we're coming from that are, quite honestly, why didn't it exist in these phones, or why didn't it exist before? Well, consumerization of these industrial, medical, military-grade technologies is one of the big part of the answer. So you're now seeing these kind of formerly tens of thousands of dollar kind of experiences and solutions getting consumerized. And that's enabling these very unique, like George's technology and so forth. What other, this miniaturization or consumerization of these military, medical, or industrial grade technology kind of innovations do you guys see? Two quick examples, anyone?
So gyroscope is one good example. Gyroscopes were traditionally used by all military applications, airspace applications for control of aviation and all that. And these are still there in use. These are, as Kristen said, these are thousands of dollars, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars system. Now we have taken from there to very small miniaturized silicon, which is now 100,000 smaller cost. Now that enables it to go into smartphone. So it's a miniaturization in terms of size, it's scaling in terms of cost, and something that can form fit into a smartphone. There are other applications. GPS is another application, uses different sensors and so on. There are similar industrial applications. For example, ppm level of gas detection is done in the industry for monitoring pollution. Now these sensors are getting again into smartphones. We call these VOC sensors, volatile organic compound sensors. And they are not yet in the smartphones that are available today, but in the next year, 2 years, probably we will integrate that into smartphones.
Okay, any other examples, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, historically, in a lot of markets, evolution of systems tends to be more powerful. Computers get more powerful over time. I think the metrics of evolution in a lot of cases is adding more capability and more power. But traditionally in a lot of these areas, it's actually tended less towards computing power, more towards things like miniaturization, towards lower power, towards obviously less expensive. And I think that those trends really play well into the characteristics that a lot of these devices require. They don't need the computing power of a Cray computer. They need less computing power, but they need to be able to do it longer. And so just a lot of the trends that we've seen, I think, have really proven to be in the sweet spot for a lot of the technology that the innovators are looking for.
Okay, great. Now we just talked about miniaturization, commercialization. At the core of that innovation really lies sensors, sensory mechanisms, sensor subsystems. And it's increasingly playing a greater role in not only bringing more valuable contextual sensing in mobile phones and whatnot, it is enabling at the end of the day these, if you think about it, all three startups that are represented tonight are, at the core of their competency is sensing, very unique sensing, right? Let me ask, maybe since Sanjay represents the sensors category, where do you see the greatest opportunity in enabling some today non-existing kind of vertical, or these type of experiences using your motion sensors or some other peripheral sensors? It doesn't have to be motion sensors that enable these type of.
So I can give one example. We talked about miniaturization of sensor. We talked about, for example, we making available a sensor of the size of grain of sand. That's now enabling applications like if the sensors can go into clothing. It can go into the button of the shirt. So you don't have to wear a big watch or something bulky. But simple things like if you're wearing your clothes and that's monitoring your motion and you add some application software intelligence to that, these sensors now are essentially giving you all the feedback in terms of your posture, your sitting posture, your standing posture while you're playing sport. So all of these applications can be enabled. Now there are more sensors. I mean, it's not just motion sensor. There is humidity sensor, there is temperature sensor. So now there is the whole biometric thing that you are being essentially monitored for yourself to see whether your body is in good shape, in health, and so on. It gives free alerts just to yourself or to your physician or to a bigger system, store all that in the cloud somewhere so that you can analyze that and eventually make use of that for your treatment.
Great. I wanted to specifically double click on one thing you just said, biosensors and kind of health. What about this, using this whole sensory mechanism in this context of building these things that are connected through your phones? What about these mobile health vertical? What, if any, types of these mobile things devices are there out there that are really not general purpose wearables, general fitness wearables, but are specifically resolving specific issues, actionable way, and helping consumers improve their health or wellness. Can you, any one of you, just one person, kind of give one example or a couple of examples of any device that you've seen or services that you've seen that address a very specific part of the health problem? Anyone? Sanjay?
Sure. There are, probably some of you have seen pictures of it, but there are body patches. These look like Band-Aid, small Band-Aid. And these have sensors. So, for example, you want to do ECG. Now, this is not the hospital level of ECG, but you want to, for example, monitor for some patient conditions. You can put a patch there. It will give you the data 24/7, give the data to your hospital or your physician. So that's becoming, probably in the next year, 2 years, you'll start seeing this.
Another thing that I had seen to build off of what Sanjay was saying, and this is not new tech, but it's getting refined and getting better, is ingestible sensors that track motility and internal apparatus of the digestive system, which has a, I kind of see some of these sensors as they get smaller, lighter, cheaper, as being enablers to take a black box into being a white box, or maybe a gray box. So, non-invasively now you can look inside the body. And it's inexpensive enough that basically it's disposable. That I think can open up a lot of opportunities that in the health arena that would make things available to people in an affordable way that wouldn't have been otherwise.
Yeah, right. Very good example. One additional example I might add is we're trying to articulate the differences between general purpose health fitness bands and these wearables or watches, smartwatches that are trying to do too many things. Measure your heart rate, your blood, oxygen level, to your pacing your step. And none of those experiences are actually pretty much accurate. Right? There are cases where these things that just go after one, pretty mundane case. For example, think of a stress level. Right? Just one gadget that's just able to very accurately monitor your stress level. There are known ways that you can do this. And think of using, there are these disruptive startups that are just focusing on those experiences. In our context, panel context, that would be a very good example. Think of that experience or specific stress monitoring, forget the other vital sign checking, stress characterization device and services disrupting the yoga studios, the meditation centers, and the wellness clinics. Right? You could now quantifiably measure how you're learning meditation and managing your stress. Right? Would you pay for $10 per month to just get that very accurate, specific experience? That's another experience I wanted to share. Let's see. Going from here. I'd like to, since we've kind of covered the sensors area, I would, it's my duty to now bug Jeff, because half of quite honestly, almost half of it, I think it's not understated, that a lot of these things, including wearables, including, these accessories that are all wireless connected to your phones and your tablets. Quite honestly, we see the average consumer use cases adoption dissuaded or discouraged by the connectivity, Bluetooth pairing and other connectivity experience not being very smooth. So the question here is, you could really enable or disable this whole, exciting trend. So the question for Jeff is, how specifically do you see, this big ticket question of making that Bluetooth, low energy, and next generation Bluetooth connectivity experience really smooth and just right out of the box, very enjoyable to use. So what specific ways do you use?
Yeah, you have so much pressure. I think, historically,
in, you know, the Bluetooth, you call Bluetooth, I'd say the Wi-Fi industry as well, the provisioning or the setup or the pairing, whatever the process is, has traditionally been difficult and haphazard. And, you know, as I said earlier, I mean, that leads to an unattractive user experience. In the worst case, it'll lead them to put the device back in the box and take it back. And both for you and for us, if you're selling the same device at retail over and over, that's not a good business model. So both for economic reasons and customer satisfaction reasons, this is a huge area of focus, and one where, you know, we as an industry, as a supplier, an industry and a standardization, and also, you know, frankly, a lot of the OEMs that we work with have kind of fallen down on us. And from the point of view of us as a connectivity supplier, I think that the standards are getting better. I think that with the Bluetooth 4.x standards, the provisioning has gotten much simpler. The industry and the suppliers as a whole are doing better to make it more reliable and simpler to configure and pair. I don't think that we view this as a competitive factor. It's an area where people work in the same direction to try to achieve greater satisfaction. There are other areas we can compete, but ultimately, if the user experience is better, it's better for all of us. At the same time, for producers of devices, there's a characteristic to go in and test and test and test the functionality and the feature set, but maybe under-test the interoperability and the provisioning stage. And maybe assume, hey, it works, okay, now we're going to go in and work on the core functions. And this is really an area not just for the chip suppliers, but also for the device suppliers, where over-testing and making sure that there's a very smooth, intuitive, well-documented setup process with FAQs and troubleshooting guides. You cannot over-test or over-document the setup process, because it's just, as I said, it's so incredibly integral to the user and the customer experience. So this is an area where we as suppliers are working hard to improve the experience, and hopefully you as device producers are doing the same thing.
Great.
And I should caution by saying that we're using CSR, not Broadcom.
Ooh.
But having said that, and why this is such something I feel so strongly about is we've been selling for several years. I would say anywhere from 80 to 85% of our returns are due to Bluetooth issues or inability to use the smartphone functions that would get them to the point of the application. So, and when I say Bluetooth issues, I don't necessarily mean that there's something broken. It's lack of understanding on the part of the user to make the Bluetooth connection. That is not a Broadcom problem. That is not a CSR problem. That is just a problem. I think that's, you know, that is just a problem. And I, you know, we had talked about this, I think, over lunch, Tristan, and it is a big problem. And as I look at this, you know, knee chart that's showing the M things exploding over the next several years, this is one of three areas that I see as potentially an Achilles heel, because we should not ever expect the user to understand what pairing means. We're engineers. We understand that that's our language. Are you going to ask a 45, 50-year-old person that has never been around any technology to pick something up and understand pairing? It's not appropriate, and we're asking too much. So we need to somehow do this better. I don't know what that answer is. If that's making use of hybrid protocols, redundant protocols. You know, Bluetooth is Bluetooth, and Bluetooth Low Energy certainly does help, but for applications that need to stream data like ours, I can't use Bluetooth Low Energy. So this is something that as a community and standards organizations has to be addressed if we're really going to see this rocket launch of these M.
Right. Jeff, do you have any last final words to, you know, just close this you know, case altogether? You know, you must have a crystal ball, you know, in your hand.
No,
I solve this problem.
No, it's a great point. I really re-emphasize that. As we reach a much broader community of quote unquote normal people that are using our devices, yeah, the level of expectation of understanding of technology needs to adjust appropriately, and it just hasn't. I mean, for technology people, they have a certain level of patience and knowledge and understanding, but for your mother or your grandmother, it's not realistic to expect that. And I think as an industry collectively, we need to be better.
So at the end of the day, Broadcom does, own the lion's share of both device, smartphone side of the, Bluetooth, embedded Bluetooth, solution, and on the client side also. Wouldn't you? I think you mentioned earlier between our conversation, open source initiatives that you're driving and trying to really step up and help. Not wait for the standardization to go solve this problem, but isn't Broadcom or yourself?
We have an architecture that we've developed called WICED, W-I-C-E-D, which is wireless internet connectivity for embedded devices. And the idea is we solve this problem, we provide open source everything. You can go up to a web community and download everything. And we make it available in a way that's, one, it's robust out of the box, hopefully, but we also provide it in open source so that you can go in and fix it. You can innovate and make it easier to use. If you find a problem somehow unexpectedly, then you can go in and fix it yourself. So, there are a lot of problems that open source doesn't solve, and there are a lot of problems that open source can solve, and making the ability to go in and fix and tune new technology rather than waiting for slow-moving standards bodies is definitely one. And as I said, we don't believe that this is an area that's really a competitive advantage. We believe it's one as an industry where everybody should make the experience better for everybody and learn from art and where people are making innovation. We feel very strongly about that.
Very good, very good. Thanks for your comments. Now, I think you beat the best horse in the Bluetooth connectivity, but speaking of kind of interface and standardization, how should we, there's no right answer to this, but how should we be thinking about common API that shapes up this ecosystem as we move forward with this mobile things vision next 5-10 years, let's say? How should we treat the standardization of the interface between these gadgets to the phones beyond connectivity, like how we sense your context, right, the color, let me ask the three startups, in your own opinions, do you think there is either benefit of somehow coming up with a standardized API that, API for user context, let's say, to avoid, let's say, the counterexample would be wearables. There are at least 50 different wearable device makers that are developing their own experiences in a 50 different way of implementing, and it is confusing the heck out of the entire consumer market. So, and that's called fragmentation. And so, in order to kind of, as each of you guys are the leading, disruptors in your own vertical space, but how would you think forward about treating this API? Do you see that common API being developed around your own experience, and then you innovate on top of it, and contribute some aspects of it to standardize this experience, your particular experience, or do you see that as more, for the time being, related to closely held IP kind of aspect? Can you start?
Well, I think there will be some great benefit to use APIs as a standard way of communicating. But the reason why we have fragmentation around wearables is because the true commercial value is not in necessarily the device itself. Everybody is talking about big data, wants to capture a lot of data. Well, how do you do that if you don't prioritize the data, if you don't make it yours? If you use a shared cloud service, it's not necessarily your data anymore, it's their data. And so everybody's rushing around to build your own cloud service, to build your own proprietary method of communicating so that you can capture that data. Now, if you can create an API system that allows you to still control that data, control that security of the communication, and still standardize stuff, that may work. But otherwise, you'll see this fragmentation continue.
Good point. Jack?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of benefit of being able to kind of like have devices that talk to other devices. You know, because it makes for richer experiences. We're seeing a lot of that with like the Nest trying to become the hub of devices, and now as you drive your car, your garage door opens, the lights turn on, the air conditioner kicks on. So I mean, I think that there's a lot of value for the end user to be able to have this interoperation, and I think it's to the benefit of devices, because then they're able to reach kind of a broader market.
Interestingly enough, listening to George and Jack, so we've got 3 verticals here, as you said, and 3 very unique verticals. I never see a SwingSmart talking to your device. I never see your device talking to George's device. So I'm a big advocate of APIs in general, particularly when we talk about connectivity, but in this case, I'm actually not an advocate of it. And I say that because these are very, very focused opportunities, and if he tried to make his application look like mine, he'd be doing a disservice to his customer base and vice versa. However, having said that, I think there are some user experience and user interface components, we'll call it a design language, that are typically introduced, I'd say, by the mobile device manufacturers that then transcend into these devices. For instance, Apple's a leader in that pinch and spread, double tap. These are things that become part of our culture and part of our design language. So when we look at a golf swing, and pinch and spread it, make it bigger or smaller, double tap it, brings it up. So, and that's a design language that's just sort of adopted, and we have just learned it because it was introduced, it was done extremely well, it became intuitive, and consequently it was absorbed into the community. So people like us would then take advantage of that because most of our users understand that design language. I think that that's more organically a way the good pieces should be pulled into our devices, but they should remain specific to what it is we're trying to do.
Right, that makes sense. I think one commonality I'm noticing the 3 startups just comment around is definitely the reason that they are in this disruptive, very highly vertical space, each of these companies are in, is because they have this defensible IP. And you definitely do not want to or are incented to open that up. Now, however, what we're hearing in common place here is that underpinning platform, if you will, how you build hardware to what type of infrastructure, like the cloud infrastructure, that could be tailored for these low power, small devices, or things like along those platform lines, there might be some synergy across these. The form factor part, the requirements are quite similar. And so the reason I want to mention this is there's, as I briefly mentioned in the earlier slides, the hardware innovations, the startups are coming back. The Silicon Valley Playground Global is investing heavily, and why are they doing that? Andy Rubin's just gone off and just made it a big deal so that the supply chain is no longer a question. Foxconn is brought up as a variable to standardize this platform development effort. Funding is no longer an issue. There's Kickstarter and whatnot. And so how do you see, how do you guys see this whole, in terms of the enablers playing into the helping these newer other verticals come up online? Can you either share, maybe it's for the questions for the startups again, your own individual experiences, how you leverage something existing to scale up your business, or maybe it was the experience the other way around because the playground, global only exists today, not 3 years ago when you started your startup. But can you construct your own experience in kind of building up your hardware platform and what you're now seeing around you that other peers of yours are taking leverage of platform-wise? George, me?
Well, we started our technology 3 years ago, first on Kickstarter. And so definitely Kickstarter was instrumental in getting us to where we are. But at the same time, when we started, there isn't really a whole lot of help around starting a hardware startup. I mean, that was just a hard battle all the way through to get to this point. So I definitely see that we speed some of our process up. If we started today, it would be probably shorten our cycle by at least 6 months because there's so much availability of resources. Jim?
Yeah, so we were actually the first class out of Highway 1, which is a hardware accelerator in San Francisco. And so that really kind of helped us, I think, go from like concept to like a pre-production product a lot faster. And now there's many more of these accelerators, and I think that even once you go from prototype to product, then there's like now the big CMs are kind of like installing kind of their own accelerators, kind of like help companies such as me move into mass production. And so I think that that's kind of like where as more of these kind of systems develop, that it'll help accelerate this deployment of Internet of Things, because there's still a huge disconnect going from prototype to mass production. And if they're able to kind of like have that China button where you're able to kind of like push it and then just have like 10,000 parts come out, as you can accelerate that, then you'll be able to kind of see this explosion of IoT.
Great point.
Well, we were largely organically funded, some private investments, but largely organically. I think the Kickstarter model, the crowdfunding model, is a fantastic model. What my hope would be is that there would be more companies that are very vertically specific, that have created, I would look at what George has done with Wearables as a platform in a sense that the whole concept of color. I mean, there's things there that probably nobody here has even thought of yet, but somebody will based on that. And that's why I love to see the crowdsourcing model, to be able to fund things that don't have the sex appeal that the guys on Silicon Valley, Sand Hill Road, are going to throw $20 million at. And yet, this is where I think some of the innovations will come in the future. And so I really like to see that that's where some of the funds are coming. And also, as you mentioned, there were design services or some sort of assistive processes where we're not in competition with each other. Maybe we can share efforts for offshoring or for hardware platforms or what have you. When we talk about APIs, we're all using probably Bluetooth engines, and there's nothing proprietary about our Bluetooth engine. And if you had a better one, I definitely want to talk to you about your sensor. So I mean, those are the kinds of things it's not even co-opetition. It's really just cooperation. Because why not? Why not both get behind that?
Great points. So let's shift gears a little bit. Sorry to bug the startups in our panel, but I have to ask this question: how disrupted? What disrupting business models that you? So I think hopefully the audience here has a pretty decent understanding of what everyone's trying to do here. But how do each of you guys make money? Can you articulate? You don't have to name any numbers or anything, but in terms of the go-to-market, how you see yourself kind of making a return in return for creating this very useful experience for the consumers and the businesses out there. What is a compelling business model that might be particularly focused on some uniqueness of your business model that maybe is not very obvious? Yeah, maybe it's George and.
Sure. I mean, as I mentioned before, our business model is primarily a subscription service. It's a hardware to software that solves a problem. That's one source of revenue. That's a strong source. There's also others, because our devices, our technology also lends itself to branding and to marketing. We have companies that approach us and say, hey, can we buy these and put our own brands and send it to our best customers to help them pick our color first, pick our product first before picking our competitors. And so that level of customization and putting their spin on the product, not just on the hardware side, it's not simply just putting a logo, but also on the software side, to integrate with their SAP enterprise software system, to be able to put their user interface, their specific application-based user interface on it. That's also a very interesting source of revenue that should not be neglected.
Okay.
Yeah, so we, we wanted to build this kind of Uber for bikes, but you can't really like kickstart like an enterprise, company, right? So that's why we started as a consumer product, and we did a pre-order campaign, and that's how we kind of generated the largest source of our revenue. And then, I think that the whole kind of Kickstarter ecosystem is also a really important, distinction in helping kind of startups get started. And so we didn't actually use Kickstarter, but I think that there's like this new phenomenon of people like being able to pre-order products and then wait like a year or two for the products to arrive. It's like probably not the greatest thing for consumers, but it's really great for startups. And so that's how we got started.
Great.
As far as, our revenue model initially was to sell devices. We sell retail, we sell it to exporting goods, Amazon, Groupon, so on and so forth. Largely to enter the market, and at the time that we did that, there were not devices like this that were used in sporting applications at a consumer level. As we got deeper and deeper into this, and as other companies came into the space, particularly ones with a lot more resources, we pivoted our business model. We still offer it as a consumer product, but as we go into other areas, we're looking instead to license our technology and our intellectual property towards equipment manufacturers, OEMs. And that will allow us better to do what we do best, which is to innovate and not have to build up advertising, marketing staffs. I think each of these guys has some nightmare stories about hardware. I'm sure that we could share over a few beers. It's a tough way for a small company to make money, but we all need hardware to get to where we want to get to for our revenue model. So our revenue model moves now towards basically intellectual property and licensing of what it is we do in the other spaces while still offering consumer products and also.
Okay, great. Given the interest of time, let's just quickly cover two last questions here. One is, so I think any of you guys can answer these last two questions. Eventually, as these things mature and take the market with some fanfare, good traction, millions of shipping units, do you foresee these experiences getting integrated into these phones? It all has to do with what unique experiences that are being created. These phones today cannot implement, for example, color, sampling you mentioned, but let's say over the next 10 years, do you see a trend where these experiences will start to integrate into the phone, and the form factor of the phone will stay the same, but the experience would somehow be, integrated? Or do you think your experiences will still remain very distinct, and due to cost reasons or some limitations of all the things that we talked about today? Maybe George might be a good person.
Well, I think for us in particular, maybe not the others, but on the long path, color sensing, we believe, will eventually be inside the phone. Your camera and the optics that goes around the camera will eventually have the ability to allow you to press the phone against the surface and measure that surface color very accurately. Now, it's, like I said, a very underserved market right now, but as consumers starting to adopt this type of technology, instead of using the paper cards to pick out their products, using their phones to pick out their products, that technology will eventually end up being inside the phone. And our technology is capable of being miniaturized to that point where essentially it's going to be a modified camera. But that's kind of our technology path.
Very good point. To add to that point, imagine a case where, and this could be one of the common vision that we're all trying to articulate here, is these experiences nowadays, today, are very unique and highly differentiated. That is, again, as we said, that smartphones today cannot, it doesn't make either sense to integrate this into the smartphone, or it's too costly. However, as the consumers, think of a world 5 years later, all of us are going to carry on this small portfolio of these M things that matter to you. You know, me as a golfer, I would carry, you know, Tom's, you know, gadget in my golf club case, not within my pocket, right? But it's always following around, and I buy one of, you know, George's, you know, color samplers. As these experiences really get, you know, prevalent, more deployed out in the market, then perhaps it makes sense. These phone guys wake up and say, okay, I now see 100 million users, loyal users. People or consumers are getting educated by using, recognizing color and using color. It makes now sense to, you know, put this experience into a phone and have all the consumers take that benefit of that experience. So I think that could be, you know, very well the next evolutionary path. The last question of the night. Speaking of kind of, after all, this whole experience and the solution experience that we're trying to deliver and articulate is envisioned to be part of this whole IoT ecosystem, grand scheme of IoT. How do you guys each feel, all five of you, that what is it, the best kind of, there's no, you know, right way to frame this, but, you know, quick, you know, way to frame your thoughts on the way forward with working with the IoT as it's defined today, ecosystem, or have you, what have you, right? The IoT as an entity that exists today, it is very unstructured, but how do you foresee yourself playing ball with the existing, you know, IoT ecosystem out there to, you know, leverage what you do and, you know, synergistically kind of define a way moving forward, either by leveraging, I think Tom and Jack talked about, you know, kind of leveraging existing platforms that perhaps, for example, the IoT, other non-mobile IoT clients are trying to do and leverage that, or any example ways that you envision kind of playing with in this IoT ecosystem? Make it kind of maybe start from Jeff. The other way.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things that I heard kind of resonate. I mean, you know, none of these gentlemen really want to be in the hardware business particularly, and it's an enabling thing for them to kind of get to the real core business models where they really do want to be making money. And, you know, ultimately the sensors are getting very small and very cheap. And the statistic that we saw earlier on the slide is the phone business is kind of tapering out. So the phone guys, you know, they're looking for new capabilities and functionalities, so you throw away your old phone and buy a new phone. And at the same time, the user interface, I think if every car maker adopted their own user interface, nobody would be able to drive. And so, you know, some of the commonality around the APIs and a common user experience, even, you know, color is very different from golf, but having a common user experience where everything works kind of fundamentally the same way no matter what you're trying to do is ultimately going to be a big driver. I mean, nobody wants to see 60 devices in their pocket and have 60 different apps on their phone. That's not a scalable model. And so ultimately, to get to 50 billion devices, it has to be scalable. Maybe the phone is, by virtue of the fact that everybody has it and it has a common user experience that everybody understands, that does get integrated into the phone, and you end up having, you know, rather than having 50 apps and 50 devices, you have, you know, 50 sensors in the phone and a common app with a common experience with lots of capabilities that allow them to monetize their business in ways that are more comfortable for them. I mean, ultimately, I think, like everything else, as things scale out, it has to become a more simple, streamlined model, or else it's going to sort of fail under its own success.
Right. Very interesting point. You know, if you think about the grand scheme of IoT, and there's a central hub, and that hub, as an app happens to sit on your phone, then maybe it's another envisioning aspect is there's a master hub, right? Like the Apple Health Kit, or, you know, what have you, a kit, an SDK hub that feeds into that way. As Jeff articulated, you love these 10 M-Things gadgets, but you have to fiddle around with 10 different apps. Now, if you have a centralized hub that is actually, after all, a periphery of these M-Things, and there's a line item for your experience, that is one way that you could perhaps leverage this IoT, platform. Any other closing thoughts? I think you don't all have to chime in if you don't have any.
So, one of the good things about this awareness on IoT is people know who to partner with. For example, the MCU players, the BLE players, they want to partner with somebody who has sensor because that's the missing component. So that there is a single solution, maybe a single chip solution or MCM solution that provides everything. That provides sensing, that provides MCU, that provides BLE. So that's something that's already happening in industry. The second thing is standardization. We talked about this Bluetooth experience, connectivity experience. So one way to avoid those kind of surprises is standardization. So that there are multiple bodies that are working in terms of standardization of sensors, for example, right? Is there. So that's going to help in terms of making this seamless experience. Fortunately, I haven't heard anybody returning a cell phone because accelerometer did not work. This has become so mainstream and so common and so easy to use that you go and the school kids, 4 or 5 years old kids, they know how to change from portrait to landscape. That's based on an accelerometer sensor, but they don't think about that. They don't have to think about it. It just automatically happens. So that's how seamlessly these applications have to work, and that's our job as enablers to do that.
Any other thoughts?
So I have a prediction that you can maybe put in a slide for the next 2 years.
Okay.
But I think as Facebook is kind of like trying to connect the whole world, and then after they get all the 7 billion people, what are they going to do? They're probably going to try to you'll be able to Facebook friend your bike or your car. And so I see that as kind of a hub where Internet of Things are going to end up jumping on your Facebook feed, and then you'll be able to see kind of what the temperature is of your house, or be able to kind of make inputs directly through your Facebook feed. And so that's just kind of my prediction. It's a way of kind of trying to tie a bunch of these things, just as Facebook is tying all these people together without having to go through kind of the app experience.
Very interesting. Thank you. That was a very nice way to wrap up our panel. A round of applause for our panel. As promised, I would like to allocate some decent time for you guys to start asking them questions. So, any volunteers? Well,
Hi, my name is Jerome Calvo. I have a Time, which is a BLE device. I think it's cute, but it's not useful. I lost my keys at farmer's market once. I was not able to home to my keys. So I have a newer list to control my posture. That's very good. BLE works with my smartphone. So I think there is pro and cons with the M-Things approach. And my question to all the panelists is, what do you think about the wide area network like the LoRa Alliance, LoRa Alliance? Have you heard about it?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Okay.
We've been
especially for you.
We've been talking to LoRa, we've been talking to Sigfox and others, and these are kind of devices that work on the 900 megahertz bandwidth or unlicensed spectrum. And I think it's awesome. I think it's totally what the Internet of Things needs to be able to connect to the Internet. We're definitely looking to implement it so you could kind of have real-time tracking. You don't have to go through 3G, which is designed for data and video and not for just a few bits of data that you want for GPS. So yeah, I think that's coming and it'll be awesome.
Questions? Others?
Hello, thank you for coming and presenting. I had a question. You're a small company, you're trying to find a way to link up with a big partner. What's the best strategy to do to get the attention of the bigger partner and make your pitch to them?
But when you say partner, do you mean investors?
Well, a larger company.
An OEM, it's going to be like an OEM or something, and you're trying to sell your product to a larger contract. I would ask that to everybody else so they could tell me. Honestly, I mean, it's not an easy thing from our perspective. Now, first and foremost, you have to have a product out there and get on the map and get some attention. But beyond that, it is a challenge. It's a challenge for a small player to deal with a big company in any context. You joked earlier about Broadcom not returning calls or something. I mean, we've all experienced that with any large company. They're focused on their business, and you have to convince them somehow that you can enable their business to give a lift in sales, to do anything that's going to be along their path or even modulate their path. But it's not easy.
I could offer a suggestion on that. Present the wireless communications lines.
Sorry, I was about to comment in a similar way. This is one of the platforms, for example, but there are other platforms. I have been presenting at other conferences where there is a session on each your idea, and there are anytime 10 to 20 different ideas being presented in those sessions. These are very small startups. Some of those are just with ideas. And believe it or not, there are VC community or at least a representation of them sitting there on the panel. And the reward is that whoever they choose, they like the ideas, they will fund that. So I would encourage you to just look around and look at those conferences which have those forums.
Hi, my name is Dushyant Desai. I'm from Jabil. I don't know if you're familiar with Jabil, but it's a company, it's $17 billion in revenue and 200,000 people. So to your question about how do you get attention if you want to partner with Jabil, we are active. So my role is, I'm in emerging growth group and I specifically focus on startups. I have talked to people with just a Gmail address, personally by returning their call or calling them, all the way to companies who are well funded, 100 people, $50, $100 million in VC funding and ready to go and scale up. So my point here is that most of these companies, because of IoT and a lot of incubator, accelerator activities, have such people. And the trick sometimes is to find such people either on the website or in a meeting like that. But once you do, typically they are a lot more receptive. And my skill is to navigate the way inside Jabil for you, for example, if you were. So, all the different organizations, who to go to, who to line up, persuade them, pitch them, sell them, to go and bat for you.
What's the typical time?
Typical